Starting off, guys, with the worst evolution in the game, we got the Evolved Goblin Giant. This card has been pretty much dead ever since they gave it 3 nerfs that completely killed the card, so the regular version and the evolution are pretty much unviable. Next up, guys, we got the Evolved Ice Spirit. The regular Ice Spirit is just way better. You're way better off using 2 other evolutions in your deck instead of the Ice Spirit evolution and just using the regular version. That's why you see the regular version played 10 times more than the evolution in a variety of cycle decks. It just really does not get a lot of value, especially when you got other tools to slow down cards like the Hero Ice Golem in the game, for example. The Evolve P.E.K.K.A, guys, is very bad as well. The regular P.E.K.K.A is better than the evolution. You're way better off running the Evolve Royal Ghost, the Evo Zap, or even the Evolve Battle Ram inside of your P.E.K.K.A deck instead of the Evolve P.E.K.K.A, which just isn't really getting much value anymore ever since they nerfed the healing. Lastly, guys, in F tier, we got the Evolve Goblin Drill. It became a little better when they buffed the Goblin count from the Submerge. I believe they added 1 more on some of the Submerges. It still is pretty bad, and the regular Drill is going to be better than the evolution, but it is no longer the worst evolution in the game. Starting off D tier, guys, with the Evolve Wizard. With the exception of it being used inside of some giant Sparky decks, it's really not going to be very good, and the Hero Wizard is actually used probably more even than the evolution, making the Evolve Wizard kind of weak. The Evolve E-Drag, guys, is pretty much only going to be viable inside of Golem and E-Golem decks, and it's not going to get very much value against cycle decks, and it's just very inconsistent, but in certain matchups it could be annoying, but it is pretty niche overall. The Evolve Hunter, guys, not going to be very good, with the exception of being okay inside of Royal Giant decks, but most Royal Giant decks, guys, prefer running other evolutions like the Evolve Royal Ghost, of course, making the Hunter not really a requirement. But the Evo Mega Knight, guys, is going to be better than the regular Mega Knight in certain decks, but there's some scenarios where you're actually better off having the regular Mega Knight and not the evolution, but it is going to be okay when you're against something like a Golem or a Giant. It's going to make those tanks really difficult to reach the tower, but I think overall it's not much better than the regular Mega Knight, and some scenarios like a Boss Bandit or an Evo Witch, you're actually going to be better off having the regular Mega Knight. The Evolve Firecracker, guys, ever since that knockback got nerfed, she's been way worse, and even inside of Hog decks, you're not really seeing her nearly as much, and people are starting to play other things like even the Evo Furnace instead of her, so she's definitely a lot worse now, but Hog is the only deck you're going to be able to use her in. The Evolve Barbarians, guys, are going to be next. A lot of Lava players switch to the Evolve Valkyrie instead of the Barbarians, so they're not being played nearly as much, and Bridge Spam decks too oftentimes prefer having the Evo Lumberjack or the Evolve Battle Ram, of course, over the Barbarians, so they're not getting played much anymore. The Recruits, guys, are going to be next. Ever since they nerfed the Charge, they've been a lot worse, and they've been really difficult to run in this meta recently, I think, with all the heroes and just the meta shifts going on. The buff the Furnace got as well, which happens to be decent against the Recruits. They've definitely been a lot worse, and even with the Evolve Royal Hogs, you don't really see them too much anymore. And it's kind of the same story with the Bats, guys. The Bats became a lot worse because ever since the minions got that range buff, they've really just outclassed the Bats in a lot of ways, but they can be viable in certain decks, maybe with Mortar or something along those lines, a giant Sparky bait deck, but the minions are just going to be substantially better. We're going to start off C tier, guys, with the Evolve Lumberjack. It's definitely a lot worse compared to what it used to be, but you can still fit it inside of a Golem deck or a Bridge Spam deck, but a lot of people prefer running things maybe like the Golden Knight over it, or another evolution like maybe even the Evo Zap. A lot of people prefer running over the Evo Lumberjack inside of the Bridge Spam deck. The Dark Goblin, guys, in a lot of scenarios, the regular Dark Goblin is better than the evolution, but with that being said, especially inside of bait decks, the Evo Dark Goblin has made a little bit of a return recently, but it's still overall going to be a below average evolution because the regular Dark Goblin gets played a lot more and people prefer having the Evo Barrel or other things over it. And the Evo Knight, guys, really fell off. It used to be one of the best evolutions in the game, but now that the Hero Knight is in the game, a lot of people prefer running it over the evolution, and so for that reason, it's not being played very much anymore, except maybe in an occasional graveyard deck you might see it, or Expo, something along those lines, but the Hero Knight just gets way more value. The Evolved Musketeer, guys, is going to be okay inside a Loon Cycle and maybe in an occasional giant graveyard deck, but definitely not going to be super versatile, and of course you can block her long shots as well, making kind of a viable, counter to her actual evolution. The Evo Archers, guys, are pretty much only going to be viable inside of Expo decks, and of course things like arrows are going to be great at taking them out, and they're just not that versatile. Same with the Evo Musketeer. It's just going to be Expo primarily that they're good in, but inside of Expo, of course, they're very, very handy. The Evolved Goblin Cage, guys, is going to be next. I feel like it's best inside of things like Electro Giant Golem. You can use it with the Recruits as well, but Recruits Cage isn't seen nearly as much anymore, so those are kind of the main decks you're going to see it in. Definitely heavier decks, not viable inside of Cycle decks, and it's going to be completely useless against air, so it's definitely a little bit inconsistent. The Evolved Battle Ram, guys, is going to be very good inside of Bridge Spam decks. A lot of people are running it with the P.E.K.K.A. that I've seen recently, and then some people are using some Bridge Spam decks with the Golden Knight as well, which can be really strong. But stuns, of course, and buildings are going to be a fairly good counter to it, so definitely not an OP evolution. I would say pretty balanced and average overall. The Evolved Bomber, guys, surprisingly has made a really big comeback recently, especially inside of Giant. Inside of this specific Giant deck, and it has the Evo Zap and the Hero Mini P.E.K.K.A. It actually finished number 2 in the world last season, proving how strong of an evolution it can be in the right deck, but it is mostly limited to that one deck, and maybe there's some people running it inside of things like Expo and maybe Giant Graveyard, but because it's not super versatile, I still think even though it finished second in the world, I'm going to have it inside of C tier, but it's way better than what it was before. And the Evo Baby Drag, guys, after the nerf, I think it's at the top of C tier. It's definitely far from dead, but now you can't just plop it inside of every deck, even Cycle. You actually got to use it inside of heavier decks, like maybe inside of Graveyard or inside of Golem, you're going to see it. But even inside of those Graveyard and Golem decks, it's not a requirement, so I think it's around a C tier evolution now, but you can use it inside of heavier decks. We're going to start off B tier, guys, with the Evolved Mortar. The Evolved Mortar was a really good evolution last season. I think this season is still going to be very good. You definitely can still pair it with the Skeleton Barrel. It's going to be really good defensively and also on offense, but it's definitely not completely broken and far from being the best building evolution in the game as well. But the fact that you get that Goblin, guys, definitely makes it way better than the standard Mortar. So that's why when Mortar's played, you're always seeing the evolution used. The Evo Valkyrie, guys, ever since the extra hit points got removed, she's been a lot worse, but she's still going to be pretty solid inside of things like Hog X NATO. Some Graveyard players even are still using her sometimes, but you don't see her nearly as much now that they took away the extra hit points. Even inside of Lava decks, I feel like it's been toned down a little bit, and you don't see her every time inside of Lava Hound anymore. The Evolved Inferno Drag, guys, is going to be really good, especially inside of Lava Hound decks, but also Graveyard Freeze. So it's mostly heavy decks you're going to see it, and if you don't have her set to it, it's going to be really strong and just really annoying in general, but I don't think it's completely broken because you do gotta cycle it a couple times before you get it, and you usually are going to only be able to get it down once in a match, but sometimes it can be that one Evo Inferno Drag that kind of wins you the whole game, so it is very situational, but I think it's definitely a solid evolution in general. The Evolved Executioner, guys, after the nerf he got to the close quarters extra damage, he's been a lot more balanced, but inside of Hog X NATO and also inside of Bridge Spam decks with the Ram Rider, he, of course, thrives and Graveyard Freeze, but I think he's definitely a lot weaker than before. And the main drawback is you have to use the regular Executioner before playing him, which I would say is a well below average card, so that definitely helps balance him out a lot, especially since they toned down his actual evolution quite a bit. And next, guys, we got the Evolve Witch. Probably the main drawback of the Evolve Witch is the same as the Executioner, the fact that you have to actually use the regular Witch, but she's going to be really good inside of mostly Graveyard decks, but because they nerfed her healing, and that was done a couple times, she's finally been a little bit more balanced, but inside a Giant Graveyard especially, she can be quite a nuisance if you don't have the right spells, but I don't think she's insanely versatile anymore, and she's pretty much only limited to Graveyard now. Even inside of things like Golem, I don't see her much anymore, and people are preferring other evolutions over her, especially because we're not in the Vines meta anymore, but she definitely is an annoying card. The Royal Giant, guys, is going to be next. Last meta, it was kind of struggling a bit. It might be a little better this season, though, because nothing in it got nerfed and the Hero Mini P.E.K.K.A. got nerfed. But the problem is the heroes don't really pair that well with the Royal Giant, and I think that's making him lack a little bit recently, and that's why he didn't finish top 10. It was one of the first seasons where no one finished top 10 with the Royal Giant, which I think really says a lot. But it's always viable no matter what the meta is, so I have to put it as an above average evolution for sure, and that knockback can be really nice against a lot of the ground cards And lastly, guys, we're going to be rounding off B tier with the Evolved Skeletons, and actually the Evolved Skeleton Barrel I'm going to have in B tier as well. The Evolved Skeletons, guys, are going to be really good inside of cycle decks. Of course, Loon Cycle, they're going to be very good. Decks like 2.6 as well, you see the Evo Skeletons in, and Royal Hog Cycle. So it's mostly going to be cycle decks. They can get a lot of value, especially if you're against an opponent that doesn't have a small spell, or even if they have, let's say, something like an Evo Zap, or they have maybe, I don't even know, just like arrows or something. You have to get them to use that spell still, and it's still a negative trade for them, and it ends up still benefiting you in a lot of scenarios, and there's just kind of that intimidation factor of them. And then, guys, the Evolved Skeleton Barrel is actually a lot worse after the nerf it got, the 6% death damage nerf. It might not seem like that's that big of a nerf, but it made a pretty big difference, and there's a lot less people using it after that nerf alongside the other balance changes. So it's definitely a lot more balanced, and I think it's actually in a good spot now. The Evolved Goblin Barrel, guys, I'm going to have an A tier. It actually finished number 1 in the world last season. I wasn't expecting it, but bait finished number 1. There was this really good bait deck with the Inferno Tower and the Dark Goblin that managed to get first in the world. And I feel like Hyper Bait 2 has been really strong recently. I'm talking about really quick cycle bait decks that have the cannon in it, or maybe they're even using like the Suspicious Bush. They're just using a bunch of cycle cards with bait, and it's really benefited the Evolved Goblin Barrel recently. Even though it did receive a nerf, I feel like the concept of having 2 barrels in, you know, each lane can be really strong if you have a tank. I definitely don't think it's S tier, but it is really, really strong right now. And even with there being a lot of log, Bard Barrel in the meta, and even Dagger Duchess returning, it is still proven to be a very, very strong evolution. The Tesla, guys, is going to be next. It's been a really good building recently, especially after they gave it the pulse damage buff. You've seen it inside of drill decks. You see it inside of course, Expo decks, and even a lot of Hog players are using the Tesla again over the Evo Cannon, and also it's going to be pretty good inside of bait decks as well, where some bait players are running it over the Inferno Tower if they want a bit of a cheaper cycle. The Evolved Wall Breakers, guys, are going to be next. They're a little bit more balanced ever since they finally got that nerf to their death damage, and I believe the damage as well. The regular Wall Breakers and the Evolution, they both got a small nerf, and that's definitely helped balance them out, and I think they're finally not S tier anymore as a result of that, and I think they're finally in a pretty good spot now, even though they're still very strong, and especially when paired with the Miner, they're still very, very good inside of Miner decks. That's where they thrive. And then you can use them with the Mega Knight if you want as well. That's more off meta. Some Recruit Wall Breaker spam decks, that's more off meta as well, but you can fit them with a lot of different things. And with the Skeleton Barrel as well, and like Suspicious Bush spam decks, you can still use them in. Of course, the Evolved Skarmy, guys, got more balanced as well. Now that they changed the speed of the Skeleton Army, it's definitely been worse. It's a bit easier to counter and isn't as overwhelming now, along with the general spawning a tile higher. I think that they did a pretty good job of balancing this card. I've seen it a lot less. I was a bit skeptical at first if it was going to be enough of a nerf, but as things have played out, I really do think it was now, and it's finally in a much better spot, and it's in a good spot because they didn't kill the card either. It's not completely dead. They did a very good job balancing this card, in my opinion, guys. The Evo Cannon is going to be next, and I think people really over-exaggerated how big the nerf was. People thought that the cannon was going to be like average or below average just because it wasn't able to take out certain cards like the Firecracker, for example, but that has proven to not be the case at all, especially when you consider the fact the Firecracker is not even good right now, so it doesn't even really matter that much. And it's still just very good inside of Royal Hog Cycle. It's good inside of Hog Cycle. Drill decks use it a lot. Some log bait players use it, guys. It really is just the building of choice still in a large variety of cycle decks, and I would even say it's better than the Evo Tesla. It just gets so much value for only 3 elixir. What really helps the card is the fact that the base cannon is still very good. That's why a lot of people really like to run the Evolution, because if they're already going to use the cannon already, they might as well use the Evolution. And 2.6 as well, people are running it, guys. The Evo Snowball has been really good recently. There's been a lot of people using it with the Goblin Drill, but even more so Graveyard, guys. Inside of a lot of Graveyard decks, there's been so many people playing it. These Graveyard decks with the Gob Hut, the Giant Skeleton, the Furnace pairs really well with the Evo Snowball as well, guys. Kind of just knocking everything back, allowing you to make room for the Fire Spirits, or it just pairs well with the Fire Spirits in general. There's just been a lot of people running it. Loon Cycle, you can run it as well. Some people putting in that Evo Snowball if they want to run the Hero Musketeer. So it's just being played a lot more, guys. We're going to close off A tier, guys, with the Evolved Furnace. I think it's really close to being S tier. The one thing keeping it from being S tier for me is the fact that pretty much the only deck you're seeing it in for the most part is with the Graveyard. It's not really that versatile yet, and that's kind of, I think, the thing that's keeping me from putting it in S tier. But I think the buff, guys, that the Furnace got to the hit speed drastically helped the card. I think that the Evo Furnace is just being played a lot more again. The regular Furnace, though, is not actually that good still. Pretty much everyone running it is running the Evo, but the Evo guys with that extra fire rate, and man, the amount of fire spirits you're getting is insane. So it's a really good evolution again, and maybe needs to be toned down. As things currently stand, though, it's not going to be an S tier. It's really close. I mean, maybe it could debatably be S. It's probably a bit subjective. We're going to start off, guys, S tier with the Evolve Zap. Now, whenever I rank the Evo Zap, there's always people in the comments saying, like, I'm always putting it higher than I should, or the Evo Zap's overrated, or it's actually not that good. But the thing is, guys, it's not necessarily that it needs a nerf. It's just it's so versatile and it fits so well in so many decks. It's kind of the reason why the Evo Skeletons were like S for the longest time. There are a lot of people saying it's like it's not, they didn't necessarily need a nerf, it's just it fits so well in many decks. The thing is, guys, the Evo Zap is so good inside of Giant decks, it's so good inside of Lava decks, it's so good inside of P.E.K.K.A decks, Bridge Spam decks in general. You can just fit it in Three Musketeers as well, Royal Hog decks. It's just really, really good. It's the reason why, too, I think certain cards like the Firecracker, the Evo Dark Goblin, the Evo Archers even just aren't as good. It's because you can just go for the Evo Zap and you're essentially getting arrows because it does arrow damage, basically, on top of units. It's the reason why arrows aren't being used as much. You got to think of the heavier decks. Cycle decks, of course, it's not going to be very effective in. It's just not going to fit well in cycle decks. But inside of heavier decks, guys, you're just seeing it everywhere. Even inside of graveyard decks, a lot of people might be using it. Next, guys, we got the Evolved Royal Hogs. These are really good because a lot of the strong evolutions got nerfed, and the Evolved Royal Hogs were already a top 5 evolution, and it pretty much was one of the only good evolutions that didn't get nerfed. So, oh, the Evo Zap, I forgot to mention the Evo Skarmy. That's like one of the reasons why the Evo Skarmy isn't broken anymore, because of the Evo Zap and the nerf it got. But anyways, guys, the Evo Royal Hogs are very good inside of Three Musketeers. They're really good with the recruits if you want to still use that. They're really good inside of Royal Hog Cycle. And I would say right now, guys, they're either the best win condition in the game or close behind Graveyard. They're very strong, and that damage they do when they come down, they do that roll or whatever, gives them a really nice boost as well, and it oftentimes forces you to overspend. Also, you can bypass buildings easier. There's usually one Royal Hog, because it's flying, that won't get pulled by a building that normally does. And even really good pro players mess up their defense against that, because it's like you just have to change how you defend them. It's a really good evolution, and definitely, I would say, in potential need of a nerf, because it didn't get one in the last set of balance changes. And whenever, guys, the stronger evolutions get a nerf, it's a buff to the evolutions that are already strong. It kind of makes them replace the strong evolutions that got a nerf. And then, guys, we got the Evolved Royal Ghost. I kind of saw this coming, same with the Royal Hogs, that the Evo Ghost was going to get better because it was already a strong evolution, and then 2 balance changes in a row, they nerfed the cards that were stronger than it, basically allowing it to become the best evolution in the game again. So the Evolved Royal Ghost, guys, going to be very good, actually, with Royal Hogs. You see them a lot together inside of Three Musketeers. The Evo Ghost is also going to pair very well with the Hero Ice Golem, probably. I guarantee we're going to see those together in a lot of decks, because the Hero Ice Golem is a good tank to the Ghost. So especially Three Musketeers, that's going to be strong, or even Royal Hog Cycle. The Ghost, guys, is also really good inside of Royal Giant Cycle decks. It's really good inside of Bridge Spam decks as well. So with the P.E.K.K.A, typically the standard P.E.K.K.A, guys, the Evo Ghost is going to be played in. And then even in Bridge Spam decks without the P.E.K.K.A, maybe you're just running a Evo Battle Ram deck with the Golden Knight and a bunch of spam guys, you're always going to see the Golden the Royal Ghost, excuse me, with it. It's just a really big threat, and you're getting those ghouls, and even though they're not as threatening as they were before, you still are often finding yourself having to overcommit on top of it, because it just can be quite a nuisance if they just keep getting those ghouls spawning in, especially if it ends up connecting to your tower. And it's just such a versatile card, and what really helps it, guys, is the fact that the regular Royal Ghost is already a really good card, so that kind of enhances the evolution, in my opinion. So that's going to be my list, guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. You can use creator code BOSS to support me in any Supercell game, and thanks again until next time, guys.